on C-SPAN on Friday, a caller called in to rant about the U.S. Supreme Court. That caller's name was allegedly John Barron. And of course, John Barron is in fact the name that Donald Trump used in the 80s and 90s to talk to reporters and heap praise upon Donald Trump when it was really Trump himself. And of course, that's why he named his very tall child Barron. But I'm going to try to play you this audio. I'm not sure how great it's going to sound, because maybe this was Trump, maybe it wasn't, but here it is.
Well, this is John Barron, and this is the worst decision you've ever had in your life, practically. Jack's going to agree with me, right? But this is a terrible decision. And you have Hakeem Jeffries, he's a dope, and you have Chuck Schumer, who can't cook a cheeseburger. Of course these people are happy. But true Americans will not be happy. And you have the woman earlier, I assume she's a woman, she's a Democrat, but she said she's disgraced. She's devastated.
All right, John.
This.
We'll go to Chester, who's in back.
So I don't know if that is in fact Donald Trump. It does sound like him. It also sounds like somebody doing an impression of him, which could also be Trump himself trying to disguise his voice. So think about this. If it were somebody doing an impression of Trump, but they'd be doing an impression of Trump trying to not sound like Trump, right? So it sounds too much like Trump to be an individual doing an impression of Trump. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't quite work. And of course, one thing that is common in people with dementia is bits and pieces, things that were repetitive through their lives. Those are things that they retain. And those are things that they will recall more frequently than other events. Trump used the John Barron alias, and called into, all kinds of reporters for 2 decades. Like, this was a very common thing that he always did. Now, if he is in fact suffering from dementia, he may not remember that everybody knows that he does this. In fact, in his brain, depending on how far along any illness that he has gone, this may even be a new idea for him. Like, he may not remember that he ever did that, and he may think that he's actually having a new idea when in fact it's recall memory. So weird stuff happening there. I can't say for certain if it is Trump or if it isn't Trump. The mannerisms, the cadence, the insults, that's definitely Trump. And we know he was pretty mad about the Supreme Court, but does he watch C-SPAN? Right? Like, if that call had come into Fox News, maybe. But I don't know that Donald Trump knows what C-SPAN is. I don't know that he can even spell C-SPAN. But I guess y'all be the judge. If you think it's him, let it be. If you don't, same thing. But definitely a weird circumstance for an individual who, if it wasn't Trump, you definitely have a career ahead of you as a Trump impersonator, because that was pretty darn close. Cheeseburger comment doesn't sound like him. That part was weird, but the gasping for breath in that clip, to me, that's the part that sounds the most like Trump. If you're doing an impression, you are very cognizant of your breathing, of all of that kind of stuff. And you hear at one point that individual can't breathe. And if Trump is like muffling his voice in something, that would hinder his ability to breathe. So, I don't know. Fergie says, it doesn't matter if John Barron was actually the president or not. The fact that it wouldn't be surprising if it were him speaks volumes. Yeah, and that's a good point, too. Like, the fact that we don't know, the fact that this is something Trump has done in his life is what's so bad about it. I mean, just absolute bonkers times we are living in here in the United States. Somebody says, no, it was John Barron. Exactly. Can you imagine the C-SPAN host said next, Trump, is that you? That would have been great. But it's like, they obviously knew something was going on. That's why they're like, okay, yeah, thanks. We're going to move on to Chester. Thanks for watching. And if you are not already subscribed to the channel, please do so. And do not forget to like and comment and share widely among your friends.